Greetings, seniors. Thus begins our Anglo-Saxon unit, and we start with the epic Beowulf, one of the first, if not the first, found narratives written in Proto-English, Anglo-Saxon English, what will eventually become what I'm speaking right now. Beowulf is the story of a tragic hero, a Herculean type of individual who answers the call and does all kinds of amazing superhuman things. And so we'll begin. A couple things to note. We're going to be looking for, kennings, alliteration in this epic. Why don't we go ahead and define what an epic is first? So we'll write this on our page. What is an epic? An epic is a heroic, it's a heroic story. It's lengthy. It's written in verse like a poem, but there isn't a rhyme scheme. So if there isn't a rhyme scheme, what kind of poetic devices are there? There is alliteration, and we'll find a whole bunch of that. And there are these interesting things called kennings, right? So there's that. What is a kenning? Let's define that. Kennings are these words or phrases of a compound nature. So multiple words, compound phrases that are used as metaphors. Metaphors. Okay, so don't really need to probably tell you what this means because you should know what alliteration means. And I guess we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So let's do it. Here we go. Beowulf. We'll start with Hrothgar, the little subtext here. Hrothgar, king of the Danes, has built a wonderful mead hall called Herot, where his subjects congregate and make merry. As this selection opens, a fierce and powerful monster named Grendel invades the mead hall, bringing death and destruction. Mead is that kind of honey beer, right? Attenuated sugars and honey create alcohol and carbon dioxide, and this is what Vikings, essentially the story is about Vikings, told by the Anglo-Saxons. It's told 300 years after the events supposedly take place by these Germanic peoples in England, but it's talking about Scandinavian Vikings. Anyway, where they live in the world, they probably couldn't cultivate grapes and perhaps couldn't cultivate barley. Therefore, they would have been drinking this around their roaring fires in Herot, right, their meeting place. By the way, I want to tell you this. Write this down. They're storytellers, chilling. I don't know where this little box is. Where did you go? There you are. Scops. This is the mead hall storyteller. This is who would be telling the tales of the heroic teller events. And if you're lucky and blessed in this life, you would get stories told about you. Most likely sung about you. Why did this scroll all the way down? That's weird. Okay. A powerful monster living down in the darkness growled in pain, impatient. As day after day the music rang loud in that hall, the harp's rejoicing call and the poet's clear songs, sung of the ancient beginnings of us all, recalling the Almighty making the earth, shaping these beautiful plains marked off by oceans, then proudly setting the sun and moon to glow across the land and light it. The corners of the earth were made lovely with trees and leaves made quick with life, with each of the nations who now move on its face. Okay, so powerful monster. Grab that right there. This is Grendel, and he's upset because he wasn't invited to the party. That's just the plan of it. to the party. And so he's going to plot and scheme. There's allusions to Cain, right? The first murderer, which we will see in a little bit. This poet right here, this guy would have been a scop. That's his name. He's a scop. He's a storyteller in the mead halls. And now let's just go ahead and grab all of the alliteration. Down, darkness, right? Day, day. You hear the repetition of sounds at the beginning of words. It's amazing. Let's go grab some more. This is how they would have made it very kind of catchy. All right, pain and patient. Music rang loud in the hall. Harps rejoicing. Rang rejoicing. Recalling, right? There's repetitions of sounds. Proudly setting the sun. Land, light. We don't really want to harp on it, but just know that it's there. Okay, so they're sitting around. The monster's plotting. They don't know this. And then, we're going to start here. And then, as now warriors sang of their pleasure, so Hrothgar's men lived happy in his hall. Hrothgar, happy hall, till the monster stirred. That demon, that fiend, Grendel, who haunted the moors. This is a moor. The wild marshes, and made his home in a hell. Not hell, but earth. He spawned in that slime, conceived by a pair of those monsters born of Cain, murderous creatures, banished by God, punished forever for the crime of Abel's death. And so I want to go ahead and just talk about Cain a little bit. Cain, as we know, is the first murderer. Please know that when Beowulf was first told, somewhere probably in the 6th century, most likely this would have been an exclusively pagan story. At this time, it's being told around 1000, and Christ has been preached to Northern Europe, and so you'll notice that there's a lot of interjection of Christian allusion in this piece. We're talking about Cain. The pagans wouldn't have known Cain. They wouldn't even have thought one thing about it. But also to compare this monster to Cain, well, what's worse than murder, right? Not a whole lot. And so this is just to sort of qualify just how bad he is. And what's his deal, right? It's almost like he was forever cursed. And that's a really sad thing when it talks about conceived by a pair of those monsters born of Cain, murderous creatures, almost like there's nothing they could do to be saved, which is just that sort of theme always makes me really sad. Anyway, he's born by murderers, punished for the crime of Abel's death. The first victim of murder, the Almighty drove those demons out, and their exile was bitter. Shut away from men, they split into 1,000 forms of evil, spirits and fiends, goblins, monsters, giants, a brood forever opposing the Lord's will, and again, defeated. There's a theme here. There's a theme of good triumphing over evil. So good wins, right? And this is where we'd all be in the mead hall and say, yes, that's right, right? So the scop is just really getting us enthralled here. Then when darkness had dropped, right? Alliteration. Grendel went up to Herot, wondering what the warriors, oh man, you guys got to grab that alliteration right there, wondering what warriors would do in that hall when their drinking was done. Look how that sounds like hip-hop lyrics, wondering what the warriors would do when the drinking was done. He found them sprawled in sleep, suspecting nothing, their dreams undisturbed. The monster's thoughts were as quick as his greed or his claws. He slipped through the door, and there in the silence snatched up 30 men, smashed them unknowing in their beds, and ran out with their bodies, the blood dripping behind him, back to his lair, delighted with his night's slaughter. What kind of evidence from the text suggests that Grendel is a extremely huge, superhuman, terrifying beast? What did you find? Is it right here, snatching up 30 men, smashing them in their beds, and pulling them back to his lair? Right. So if we have a superhuman monster, we're going to need a superhuman hero, don't you think? All right. At daybreak, with the sun's first light, they saw how well he had worked. Well worked is alliterative, and in that gray morning broke their long feast with tears and laments for the dead. Hrothgar, their lord, sat joyless in Herot, a mighty prince, mourning the fate of his lost friends and companions, knowing by its tracks that some demon had torn his followers apart. He wept, fearing the beginning might not be the end. And that night Grendel came again, so set on murder that no crime could ever be enough, no savage assault quench his lust for evil. Then each warrior tried to escape him, search for rest in different beds as far from Herod as they could find, seeing how Grendel hunted when they slept. Distance was safety. The only survivors were those who fled him. Hate had triumphed. But remember the theme here. Good wins in the end. So we know that hate only triumphs for a time. So Grendel ruled, fought with the righteous, won against many, and won. So Herot stood empty and stayed deserted for years, 12 winters of grief for Hrothgar, king of the Danes. Sorrow heaped at his door by hell-forged hands. Hell-forged hands is our first example of a kinning, right? Multiple word, compound phrase with metaphor attached, right? Hell-forged hands. We know, of course, Grendel wasn't forged in hell, made by hammers, but his hands are doing the work of evil and opposition. So this is an example of a kinning. Think kind of nickname, I think, would might be a start for kinning. Anyway, of the day, sorrow heaped at his door by hell-forged hands. His misery leapt, right? That's kind of interesting, personifying the feeling of mystery. His misery leapt the seas, was told and sung in all men's ears how Grendel's hatred began, how the monster relished his savage war on the Danes, keeping the bloody feud alive, seeking no peace, offering no truce, accepting no settlement, no price in gold or land, and paying the living for one crime only with another. And you know, me being an English teacher, I got to grab this kind of cool parallel structure right here. Let's grab it. Feud, seeking no peace, offering no truce, accepting no settlement. That right there is a bit of cool parallel structure. Right? When we keep the same grammatical structure, right? What's that? Verb, negating word, noun, and it just says this 3 times in a row. That's just cool writing. Anyway, so Grendel cannot be appeased, and the call goes out, and so of course there's going to be someone who answers the call. We've seen enough Marvel movies. Know that this is the first great hero that we have in literature. Okay, in gold, so paying the living for one crime only with another. No one waited for reparation from his plundering claws. Okay, reparation is kind of an interesting word being used here because early Germanic tribes, like the Anglo-Saxons, if you were to say accidentally kill somebody, you could pay for your crimes, and that's what that means here, right? You could pay off the family who you accidentally or purposefully killed, and legally in their system of government, this would work. This would be an acceptable thing. No one waited for reparation from his plundering claws because he's the big bully in town who doesn't care. That shadow of death hunted in the darkness, stalked Hrothgar's warriors, old and young, lying in waiting, hidden in mist, invisibly following them from the edge of the marsh, always there unseen. If we're listening to this and we're a child in the mead hall, we're terrified, right? So mankind's enemy, grab that. That is a kinning. That's a kinning right there. I'm going to just go like K for kinning. Continued his crimes, killing as often as he could, right? Continued crimes coming could, right? This is alliterative. alone, bloodthirsty and horrible. Though he lived in Herot, when the night hid him, he never dared to touch King Hrothgar's glorious throne, protected by God. Look at the interjected Christian influence here. Almost biblical illusionary, right? Like God's throne, right? This is the interjected Christian influence in this pagan story. Almost like good King Hrothgar has almost a godlike quality. I wouldn't maybe go so far to say, whose love Grendel could not know. There's the sort of forever cursed Grendel. That's sad. This is a curse, like sin of Cain kind of curse. But Hrothgar's heart was bent. The best and most noble of his council debated remedies, sat in secret sessions, talking of terror, and wondering what the bravest of warriors could do. And sometimes they sacrificed to the old stone gods. Look what they're doing here. Look how they're backsliding. Look how they're backsliding to pagan ritual, looking for help in all the wrong places. That's kind of interesting. It reminds me of stories in the Old Testament when God's people would do the very same thing. Think about Aaron taking the earrings and jewelry and making a golden calf when Moses was too long on the mountain, right? And all that kind of thing. Okay. But Hrothgar's heart was bent. Sorry, the old soul. Made heathen vows, hoping for hell's support. They're so distraught that they're seeking the devil's guidance and driving their affliction off. They are in a bad way, everybody. That was their way, and the heathen's only hope. Hell always in their hearts, knowing neither God nor his passing as he walks through our world, the Lord of heaven and earth. Looks like the storyteller right now is really doing some preaching when you think about it. Their ears could not hear his praise nor know his glory. Let them beware. Those who are thrust into danger, clutched at by trouble, yet can carry no solace in their hearts, cannot hope to be better. Hail to those who will rise to God, drop off their dead bodies, and seek our Father's peace. So we've got a sermon here. This is full on. Hey, by the way, stay close to God, right? Call on his name. And I think that's probably where we'll stop for the day. What have we covered so far? We looked at biblical allusion. We looked at kennings, which are a major device found in epic poetry, and we looked at a whole mess of alliteration. Have a God bless day.